It was a quiet Wednesday morning when Walter Jennings, a 68-year-old retired civil engineer, found himself sitting on the edge of his bed, rubbing his temples. His sleep had been restless again. Headaches, strange buzzing in his ears, and a sense of fatigue that didn't make sense for someone who had been trying to stay healthy. Walter and his wife Linda had been married for 43 years. They lived in a small, cozy suburban home in Pennsylvania. Their bedroom hadn't changed much over the decades. There was the same queen-size bed they had bought after their 10th anniversary, matching nightstands, an old alarm clock, and a few decorative lamps. They had a small bookshelf by the door, and of course, their TV on the dresser facing the bed. But something wasn't right lately. Walter's health had been on a slow decline, and while aging came with its normal aches and tiredness, this felt different, more persistent, more unexplained. Linda, who had always been attuned to subtle health changes, had noticed it too. "Walt, you've been getting headaches almost every day now. You barely sleep, and when you do, you say you dream of static or noise. That's not normal." At first, Walter shrugged it off. "Just getting old," he'd mumble. But after weeks of foggy mornings and restless nights, he knew it was time to look deeper. One afternoon, Linda came home from the local library with a book titled Silent Radiation: The Hidden Dangers Lurking in Your Home. She wasn't usually one for conspiracy-type reads, but this one had been in the health section. The book focused on how certain household items, especially those in bedrooms, could emit low levels of electromagnetic radiation that, over time, could harm older adults with weakened biological defenses. Walter raised an eyebrow. "You think our lamps are giving me brain cancer?" Linda shook her head. "No, but I think we should just take a look around. At least rule some stuff out." That night they went room by room, starting with their bedroom. The book mentioned several items to investigate, starting with electric blankets. Walter didn't use one, but his heated mattress pad, used every winter for nearly a decade, suddenly seemed suspect. It had frayed cords and often buzzed softly when plugged in. The first item: heated mattress pads or electric blankets. While cozy, these emit electromagnetic fields, EMFs, that could interfere with sleep cycles and heart rhythm, especially in older adults. Over time, consistent exposure while sleeping on one could weaken cellular repair mechanisms. They unplugged it that night. Next, Linda turned toward the bedside lamp. The bulb inside was one of those compact fluorescent lamps, CFLs, they bought years ago during an energy-saving campaign. The book warned that CFL light bulbs emitted small amounts of ultraviolet radiation and also contained trace mercury, which could leak if damaged. Worse, the radiation exposure near the head during reading could accumulate over years. They switched the lamp to a simple LED the next morning. Walter didn't want to admit it, but he was getting worried. The idea that their bedroom, supposedly a safe, restful space, could be harming him was unsettling. Then came the third item: older digital alarm clocks, especially those with red LED lights and built-in radio antennas. Walter's bedside clock fit the description exactly. The book explained how these clocks, if placed within 3 feet of the bed, exposed the brain to constant EMF levels all night. Walter unplugged it immediately, thinking about how it had buzzed slightly for years. They decided to replace it with a non-digital wind-up model. But it was the fourth item that really struck him. Cell phones left charging by the bed. This one hit home. Walter always placed his smartphone on the nightstand. He even used it as an alarm. But the book made it clear: phones searching for signals during the night emit bursts of microwave radiation, especially harmful to aging brain tissue. There had been preliminary links to memory loss, fatigue, and sleep disruption. Walter stared at his phone for a long time. "I had no idea it could be hurting me while I sleep," he said. From that night on, he left the phone charging in the hallway. The fifth and final item came as a bit of a surprise: smart TVs in bedrooms. While the screens themselves don't emit much radiation when off, the wireless signal receivers, especially if connected to Wi-Fi, constantly pulse data back and forth. This creates a field of low-level electromagnetic radiation in the room at all times. Walter had always fallen asleep watching baseball reruns or late-night news. But the book urged removing TVs from sleeping areas or, at the very least, turning off the Wi-Fi connectivity and unplugging them when not in use. It was tough for Walter. TV was comfort. But he remembered what the book emphasized. After 65, your body becomes more sensitive to chronic exposure. What a healthy 30-year-old might tolerate, a senior's nervous system might not. Walter unplugged the TV and moved it to the guest room the next day. The changes didn't produce miracles overnight. But within a week, his headaches began to fade. He no longer woke up drenched in sweat or confused by strange dreams. His sleep became deeper, and mornings didn't feel like a foggy blur anymore. Even his mood lifted, something Linda noticed right away. "Feels like we took the toxic out of our bedroom," she joked one morning as she handed him coffee. Walter smiled. "Feels like I finally woke up. And it only took retiring half our electronics." They didn't become anti-technology crusaders, but they became more mindful. Walter began researching EMF shielding paint and added blackout curtains to help reduce light and wireless signals from the street. Linda started keeping her Kindle in the living room instead of reading with it in bed. Their adult children laughed a little at first, calling them old school. But after Linda sent the book to their daughter in Oregon, she called back saying she'd moved her router out of her bedroom. Walter began sharing his story at the local community center. Other retirees listened with curiosity and some skepticism, but a few started making similar changes. The result? Most of them reported better sleep, less anxiety, and fewer headaches. What began as a quiet concern became something of a local movement. People began asking the library to order more books on EMF exposure, and a group of seniors even invited a radiation safety consultant to speak at the town hall. One of Walter's closest friends, Harold, had recently been diagnosed with early-stage memory loss. After hearing Walter's story, Harold and his wife conducted a similar room audit. Harold later claimed that, after reducing his nightly radiation exposure, his concentration seemed to improve, and his sleep quality significantly increased. The science may still be evolving, but for Walter, Linda, and many others, the results spoke for themselves. When people get older, the things that were once harmless begin to take a toll. The body is more sensitive, more vulnerable, and more in need of recovery during sleep. Bedrooms must be sanctuaries, not silent danger zones filled with humming, buzzing devices. A few years later, on his 72nd birthday, Walter gave a speech at the Senior Wellness Fair. He stood tall, confident, healthier than he had been in years. "If there's one thing I learned," he said, "it's that our bedroom is our recharge station. But we can't recharge while we're being drained at the same time. Sometimes the most dangerous,